If you were like me, you only knew Vincent van Gogh for being a famous painter, and also only for his painting The Starry Night, and nothing else really, and who cut his ear off one time for some random reason. But after having played through the Dear Van Gogh event in Sky, I actually regret not having documented my experience as someone who isn't that familiar with Van Gogh, because I actually ended up learning that I resonate with his story much more than I anticipated, and that his motivation can be applied to basically anyone. Luckily, I still remember my natural progression of affection for this story, and I want to share my experience and thoughts with you. Whether you know nothing about Van Gogh or you played the event and want to hear someone else's experience, I think by the end of this video, you might be able to relate and also maybe change your perspective of the artist, or just life in general. As a non-artist, I didn't really have much interest in getting to know the history of Vincent van Gogh, nor cared about how he came to be famous. He was just another renowned dead person for his unique art style. Good for him. So when TGC, or that game company, the developer of Sky Children of the Light, released an event called Dear Van Gogh, I wasn't particularly interested in playing it. Like I mentioned before, I had no reason to care about him. But I will admit that this one hairstyle caught my eye, so I was willing to play through the story just for the sake of obtaining the cosmetic. I wasn't in a rush either, since the event had over 60 days left when my best friend, who introduced me to the game, and I talked about participating. She is an art fan and was enjoying the event a lot, and I admitted that I saw very little clips of the art style and thought it to be adorable, which motivated me a little more to play. A few weeks ago, when I had a little free time between my self-made schedule, I decided to hop on Sky and start working for the cosmetic that I wanted. At the beginning, when Vincent tried different career paths before eventually finding his way into art, I really empathized, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life either. I eventually landed a bookkeeping job at my parents' workplace, and even though I was good at it, I still felt unfulfilled. Anyway, back to the event. At some point, Vincent took up drawing and painting and moved to Paris, where his brother, Theo van Gogh, was working as an art dealer. He was surrounded by artists who were doing things differently from what he was used to, which inspired him to become more experimental with his own paintings. We, as the players, even got to paint one of his works ourselves. It was this one. I am not going to try to pronounce that for the sake of not butchering it. That's also where I stopped playing. I think my plan was to play one painting/quest per weekend, but that didn't really work out. Until this past weekend, on Saturday, 15 August. I wanted to continue playing the event and grind to get the hairstyle. I got comfortable, sat in front of my PC, and opened Sky once again. After the first painting, I was a little more invested. I didn't know that Vincent hadn't started out as a painter, and that he tried other jobs first before he actually got into painting. It was also really interesting to get to sort of experience his life story through the letters that him and his brother sent to each other. So I wanted to see how the event played out. I also loved the fact that we got to interact with the paintings and, in a way, paint them ourselves. I don't want to spoil too much in case you still haven't played the event and are planning to, or if you suddenly want to download the game to play the event yourself. But this next part might contain some spoilers and also a small graphic scene, so just skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear it. The story continues where Vincent moved to the famous yellow house in Arles? Arles. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm really trying my best. Where he later lived with another artist, Paul Gauguin, where they worked together, but their personalities and artistic philosophies clashed badly. Not only that, but Vincent was also becoming increasingly emotionally unstable. I think the developers did an amazing job representing this by having crows appear every time his mental state got worse. It was done to show the player that something was happening without obviously pointing it out and without needing any dialogue to carry over the message. And then came the ear incident. After a particularly serious confrontation between Vincent and Gauguin, Vincent cut off a piece of his own ear. And I'm really glad that some context was given to this event because, like I said, I just heard of Van Gogh cutting off his own ear and being called the insane artist. I didn't know that he was suffering mentally, which caused me to care more about Vincent's story. We don't exactly know what went on in his mind during these events, just that he was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. So no one can say for sure why he mutilated part of his own ear. But eventually, he voluntarily admitted himself to a psychiatric hospital in Saint-Rémy. Funny enough, this was also where he created his famous painting, The Starry Night. He didn't stop creating because he was suffering. He kept creating despite it. And I find it sad yet beautiful because, again, I did not know that he was emotionally unstable while he was creating some of his popular pieces that we know of today. Fun fact, he created around 150 paintings while staying there, and he was only in the asylum for a year. It's somewhat inspirational to me that he did not abandon his love for art, even if he was basically at the lowest point in his life. In a way, I feel like that was one of the things that kept him going, that and the continuous support of his brother, Theo. Which brings me to the next part of the event. Theo married Johanna Bonger, usually called Jo, and they had a baby boy who they named Vincent. Predictably, Van Gogh became very attached to his little nephew and created another piece inspired by the birth called Almond Blossom. We got to run around in the cherry tree that Vincent had painted, which was fun. But then the crows appeared again in greater numbers and size, indicating that Vincent's mental health was still getting worse. After a year, Vincent left the asylum and he went to live in Auvers, which is a small town near Paris. During this period, Vincent produced around one painting a day on average. He was producing incredible work, being surrounded by the countryside and finding so much inspiration. But unfortunately, it was short-lived. Roughly 2 months after Vincent moved to the small town, he suffered a gunshot wound in his chest. Theo was notified and traveled to where his brother lived. 2 days later, Vincent passed at the age of 37. Theo was also experiencing poor physical health and was constantly under pressure in his personal and professional life. He passed away approximately 6 months after Vincent died. That only left Jo, Theo's wife, and their infant son. Jo was left with Vincent's paintings and the huge collection of letters between the two brothers, and she decided to do whatever she could to give Vincent's work the recognition it deserved. She devoted her life to bringing the hundreds of Van Gogh artworks and letters she inherited to public attention. After 15 years of persistence, a Van Gogh exhibition was held at a museum in Amsterdam, and it cemented Van Gogh's reputation as an artist. What touched my heart most during this whole story is the fact that Vincent did not get to experience the recognition and admiration that he does today. He died at a young age after spending the final decade of his life pursuing what he loved. And from what I learned through the story, Theo and Jo felt like two of the people who believed in him most deeply. Theo while he was alive, and Jo after his death. Even though very few of his paintings sold during his lifetime, they were the ones who believed in him and his work. Vincent did not receive the love he poured into his life's work while he was still alive, and it breaks my heart so much knowing this about him. But at least his work did eventually get the recognition it deserves, thanks to the wonderful people that believed in him until the very end, and then after the fact too. The reason why I resonated with Van Gogh's story is that I also want my life to mean something. I also wish to create things that impact people for the better. I want to keep doing what my heart loves no matter what, even if no one believes in me but myself. Because you can never, ever go wrong while following your heart. Maybe it will take you some time to figure out what that is, but the journey is well worth it. That's why I'm here right now, following my heart. My dream is to create content and create a space for people to unwind, escape, lift their mood, find someone relatable or that represents what they need, to feel like they're hanging out with a friend while watching their favorite game or discover a new game that they might love, and to share these amazing worlds that other people create. I feel so privileged to have experienced this event. I may regret not having recorded my experience playing through it, but I am damn well glad that I at least did play. I am very appreciative of the developers and every person that was involved in creating this experience, especially Kevin Penkin, who I only learned today created the absolutely beautiful original soundtrack for this event. If you don't know this about me yet, I am a massive sucker for good soundtracks, whether that's in games or stories. It makes me happy to know that there are people who make and share things like this with the worlds they have created. And I wish to continue being one of the people who experiences moments and stories like this and share it with you. I also genuinely love the fact that Jo was the one to personally show us every painting that appeared in the event and hand us the letters that were sent between Vincent and Theo. It is a beautiful detail, especially after having played through the whole event. At the beginning, I really thought she was just some random lady showing me Van Gogh's artwork. This video is not sponsored at all, by the way. It's purely just me wanting to share my thoughts and experience. If you wish to play the event, you can download the game Sky, Children of the Light. I think there are more or less 40 days left of the event depending on when this video comes out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!